Okay, we're ready to begin. We're having this press conference, folks, just because we want to make it very clear. There's some intimation, some thought in the public that we are going to bring a lawsuit. That thought is erroneous. That's not the way this law firm operates. What we're going to do is try to bring change, well needed and much deserved change. Our aim in taking these wonderful people on as clients is to develop an awareness that student athletes are the first and only priority of all of our public schools. Their safety is paramount to any and all other considerations. And with regard to that, I wanted to first tell you that I feel very fortunate to have been raised here in Tampa and be part of the public school system. I know this school board well, and Mr. Eakins and the school board are to be commended, not condemned, because of the efforts that they've made when they do make errors throughout the system, or in the system, I should say. They are the type of people that take responsibility, own it, and then make necessary changes. And those are the type of people we invite into our community. So at the outset, let me compliment the Hillsborough County School Board. I should point out that our client, Mrs. Walters, Phyllis here, is also an employee of the school board, so she has a high opinion of those folks. You may recall several years back, I think it was about 3, we had a young man named McNamee. Mr. McNamee was a young football player at Wharton High School who injured his skull and drove part of his skull fragment into his brain, and miraculously was treated here in local hospitals by some really gifted physicians and lived. He suffered some brain damage, but I'm happy to report he's doing well. As a result of that case, and I can't stress the importance of this enough, as a result of that case, I learned several things. One, the Florida High School Athletic Association has a mandate, not a recommendation, but a mandate, that every school, public school, will have in place a $1 million policy to protect the student athlete over and above the sovereign immunity cap. And what the sovereign immunity cap does right now, it's an antiquated cap, but the version that we have now allows a maximum of $300,000 to go to anybody that's injured or killed if a public servant is involved in the wrongdoing. What is that? The entirety of any recovery is limited to $300,000. And why do I say that? There are 67 counties in Florida. And the Florida High School Athletic Association lead the authority over all 67 counties. Of the that has $1 million state. Because of the McNamee case, the things that we agreed to with the school board was that they would up their liability coverage for families like this and parents who give and entrust their young children and young adults to our public school system so that they can have some modicum of relief in the tragic events that sometimes unfold. It's up to you to remember, and I think hold responsible the folks in the other 66 counties and their school boards and ask the question, why don't you have that in place? Why don't you have that protection in place? And the answer I would suggest to you is that as a penalty for not adhering to that mandate, the penalty is a $100 administrative fine. So you figure it out. When we tried to get other counties to adopt that policy, we were met with, why should we? Why should we pay for premiums or insurance or self-insurance or any type of reserve? Because the most we could ever lose is $300,000. We decided to say that's the attitude we have in Hillsborough County. So again, I want to commend the school board for stepping up. Also add, for those of you, we also got the school board, again, I have to commend them, their sponsorship of our claims bill for $1.7 million. In addition to the $300,000 sovereign immunity, they helped us in the Florida legislature And unlike some of the other athletes who've been killed, and I think we've got some sports people here today, some of these people have tried to get the Darling case. You know how many years some of these people try to get relief from our legislature? I will say that we got relief the first year, and the family did get the special claims bill passed, so they got relief. Now would be an appropriate time to tell you that this family, the last thing this family is looking for is money. So, and I think this law firm is well known to most people in this community. Our goal is never money. Our goal is change. Change, societal change for the good. So let me address that point first. There's not enough money in the world to bring Hezekiah back. There's not enough money in the world that these parents would ever take for the loss of their son. Now, unfortunately, because of this practice and the people we represent, too often we've seen parents do the most unnatural act in the world, burying their own child. There can be no greater, in my humble opinion, no greater loss to any being than burying their own child. They've endured that. Their goal is not to bring Hezekiah back. Their goal is to make a difference. And that's why they're here, and that's why they came to this law firm, and that's exactly why we're representing them. And there's not going to be enough money thrown at this problem to fix it. We want change. Again, before this press conference, which we weren't going to have, there were two other press conferences held by Superintendent Eakins, and he made sure that he said that changes were in place, that removal of some people had already occurred, future removal of others was going to happen. And I will tell you, I won't get into specifics because today is not the day for that. Litigation is a possibility. I hope it's remote. I don't think it will happen. I think we'll be able to work with this school board. But let me say this. With regard to what they've done, it's good, and I hope they do more. But it's never a good situation when anything has to be done. We need to be proactive as opposed to reactionary. We need to take efforts to stop these horrible events and tragedies before they occur. And that's our goal. In case anybody is under a misimpression, our goal is not just for Hezekiah's justice. Our goal, more importantly, is for the next Hezekiah, who won't be in a grave, but will be enjoying life with his family like that young man should be. With that, we'll be happy to take any questions and try to answer any inquiries you may have.
So what changes can be made yesterday, today, tomorrow, immediately to prevent this from happening again?
Excellent question, and the answer has already been put forth to the public. Superintendent Eakins has said there ought to be a full-time athletic trainer at each and every one of these schools. There's no excuse not to have it. In fact, one of the problems with this particular tragedy is there weren't the people that should have been present. Had those people been present, there's a great likelihood this tragedy would have not unfolded the way it did. It would have been a practice. You know, this is a young man, a 14-year-old young man. I was talking to his dad before the press conference who played sports, and it's a young man who really wasn't accustomed to sports. It's a young man who was really trying to get into football. He's 14 years old. His father and mother expected him to be at the JV level, and for those of you that know sports, JV is much different than varsity. He walked out there, and what he was asked to do, which he did his best to fulfill, were some very strenuous tasks and exercises and drills. Probably not appropriate for a young man. Hence the necessity for an athletic trainer. As some of you may know, we've sued University of Central Florida. We had a case against the University of California. Jeff and I went out on that, and Berkeley changed its entire protocol for sickle cell trait athletes on all of the University of California campuses. And they also gave the family great monetary relief in addition to those changes, and retired the young man's jersey. University of Central Florida took a whole different position. They took the position and hid behind the sovereign immunity. They thought the parents, despite the loss and the $10 million verdict we got against them in a court of law in Orlando, they thought the parents should be limited to the $200,000 sovereign immunity cap. So rather than have changes at University of Central Florida, and I know I'm going to offend some University of Central Florida alums, but I really don't care, because the ones I don't want to offend are the ones that are going to listen to this constructively. Instead of making the changes they should have made, that school built a statue to George O'Leary, who was present at that drill and admonished this young man, 19-year-old wide receiver with a 4.0 average, admonished him to get up and continue football drills that were killing him. So you have one school, a public school, University of California, that does the right thing. They admit wrongdoing, take care of everything, and change their whole protocol. And then you have another school right here in our own home state, which does the exact opposite. Fights us tooth and nail, takes us to the Florida Supreme Court, and I'm talking about years of litigation. So I told them when I was informed they were going to build that statue, that they should make it about 50 feet high so all the people who want to hide behind it have room. Because that's an example of not taking responsibility. Contrast that with today. Our school board is taking responsibility. And I'm extremely proud of that. The parents are grateful. Now we're going to see how far that responsibility is taken. But to answer your question, one, athletic trainers, excuse me. Two, appropriate protocols that are enforced to make sure there's some misinformation out there we wanted to correct. This family and this young man did. They completed every document. They fulfilled every request. The shortfall on what should have been done did not occur on this side. It occurred on the side of the school. And I'm very clear on. The second prong of what you asked should be done is that schools need to fulfill their responsibility. When there's information about, and I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the right people, but when they're supposed to get information about a student athlete, they need to get that information. This is not a game. This is an exercise where death is on the line each and every day. Anybody that's gone outside today or gone outside on any hot summer day in Florida knows the heat is not your friend. Exhaustion, not your friend. And when you're a young man struggling to catch air, struggling to put oxygen to the organs that are needing that oxygen, it's critical that appropriate care be taken and that each student athlete is cared for in the manner each student athlete requires. Whether they have a blood disorder, or whether they have a physical disability, whether they have any kind of traits that need personal attention, that's what we can in our schools. You know, one thing every parent does, anybody that has a child, not only knows the value of that child, but they know what trust means. And what every student athlete, and I think Phyllis has spoken to me about that at length in the office. And David, I know you've been involved, and you, Jeff. The same thing is said by all these parents. Not to be redundant, but these parents trust the most valuable thing they have in this lifetime on this planet to the school system that we have. And that trust cannot be betrayed. Again, protocols need. Three, people that are supposed to be at these scrimmages, all the scrimmages, they need to be there, present. They need to fulfill and discharge their responsibilities. This is not a one-person requirement. This is a team effort that involves both the student athlete, the faculties of the school board, the athletic trainers, the coaches, certainly the coaches, and each and every person involved trusted with the fate of these people, the parents, who give their children and their young adults to our school system. I think that's too much to ask.
My question, you mentioned on, the side superintendent, you believed he had a physical done. Is that the case? Did he have a physical? Was there anything before that, maybe with his health was bad or that had come up in the past?
No. The only thing that was an issue is his age, his tender age, and his lack of experience on the athletic field. Had he been an NFL player, I know that this would have happened. But if you look at the training they get, that's probably at the far end of the spectrum. But a 14-year-old person should certainly be treated as a 14-year-old. the old adage.
And that's why Mr. Walters brought that up to the coach, correct?
As I understand it, David, you want to speak to that?
We'll need to move all the microphones over.
Yeah.
But I'll speak to that. Yes, it was brought up, and did we need to amplify that?
No. Yeah.
Hezekiah's choice
Wait,
to
Hold on a second. Hold on.
She wants to be in the shot, David.
okay.
All right.
Hezekiah spoke with his father and his mother about the choice to play football, and this wasn't something that had gone on for many years. This was fairly. He had not had an athletic. Father Felix played high school in Florida himself. He understood the conditioning and recognized that there were some. Hezekiah wasn't quite ready for this, and so he made sure he went out there that first day, met the coach, who he would be entrusting his son to, spoke with him about it, and said he needs some encouragement and some teaching and some work to get him climatized. And of course, we know from the research and everything that's associated with exertional heat illnesses that that's critical. It's critical to get the person properly climatized. And with high intensity exercises, the body cannot dissipate the heat. But you got to get trained up for it and train your body to it. Mr. Walters knew that. He spoke with them.
Don't get
The
too much
coach,
into facts, David.
the coach responded and said, "We'll take care of your son," and trusted that.
A beautiful picture behind you, I believe you took just a day or two after the. I mean, he seems happy and healthy there. So this was sudden.
Yes, that picture is taken, that's correct. That's taken either the first or the second day after practice of the first week, in which they gradually worked into some conditioning. But we understand was a weightlifting information. We have not received exactly what the details occurred, but there was no practice on this Tuesday.
Don't get into the facts, okay?
And so was a different exposure he had. Hezekiah didn't have any weight training that day in the weight room. He was outside.
Which day was this picture taken?
That would be June 3rd or June 4th.
And you also have seen this one here. Okay. Thank you, David.
You said there's no. I just want to change. Are you considering a lawsuit? And furthermore, is there any money coming to the family in some way, shape, or form somehow?
Well, the answer to your question is too many lawyers file too many lawsuits. So the answer to your question is we file a lawsuit here when everything else fails. I'm optimistic. I believe that change can be best afforded where there is a team effort. That is, an adversarial process is not in place, but a conciliatory process of responsibility is put in place so that we can all work together for a better change. You know, once you declare war, the lines are pretty much drawn. Believe me, we're more than capable of filing a lawsuit and taking a case to trial. I mean, everyone here knows that. That is the last resort. What we intend to do is work with the school board, and to answer your question specifically, we intend to work with the school board for a satisfactory situation. If we don't arrive at that satisfactory situation in a manner necessary to protect student athletes and parents like these, then we'll take other measures. With regard to money, I guess, you know, there are always going to be people out there who say, oh, you know, your ambulance chasers and money. I heard it all. I heard of the tobacco case when everyone said we shouldn't take on tobacco, and we did, and it wasn't the money that comes into Florida every year, by which $440 million a year. And it wasn't the change, banning Joe Camel and the Marlboro Man and taking down the billboards and eliminating cigarette machines and vending machines. It wasn't any of that. It wasn't the funding of the Truth Campaign. What it was is pure and simple, a societal sea change that saved millions of Americans. That's what it was. What we have right here is a microcosm of we can change the way we treat student athletes. And that opportunity is what's being afforded us now. And if that opportunity goes into an adversarial situation, we'll look at how good that works. I think what we need to do is remember we're all in this together. And everyone that sees this broadcast probably has a child in her immediate family, his immediate family, or certainly in the family tree. And I doubt if any one of those people would say that not taking care of those children to the very best of our abilities is something we don't desire. So the answer is, yeah, there should be monetary relief, because it seems like some folks, and I'm not saying the school board, but some folks in my professional career, 4 decades, they don't learn unless they have to pay. They don't get it. They don't get it. You know, sometimes corporations don't look at pain and suffering because they don't feel it. People feel pain and suffering. People have real losses. People, real people, go to the cemetery and the grave sites, not corporations. So the profit above safety is always an issue in my practice and in practice of my partners. But I didn't want to get on the soapbox. What I want to tell you is we will take whatever relief is necessary to mandate change and to promote the well-being of our student athletes. Does that include a lawsuit? Absolutely. Does that include taking money from the school board or the coffers of the state of Florida? Sure. If that's what it takes, sure. Do these people deserve compensation for the loss? Absolutely. But you can get 1,000 advertising lawyers to tell you about compensation and how we can get money for you. That's not the way we operate here. We want to get change. We want to get change for them and change for all the future Hezekiahs.
But will the family be eligible, or are they going to get the $300,000 under the immunity cap?
Yeah, I think in Hillsborough County, that if they're eligible, as you say, you know, if they're entitled, and I believe that, you know, I don't want to prejudge what the facts will be, but assuming there's wrongdoing, that steps up to the right $1 million in 60 counties. The relief will be $100,000. Message that needs boards either be or unable to do the right thing, because in today's world, in today's dollar, you're going to talk about that, and then this family, the crumbs that are left, and say, that's unfortunately the answer I have to give you. And I will tell you this: I think that is something that they will do, but something that should have already been done.
I don't want to be presumptuous, but I just want to kind of clarify. So, I really want
I don't want them to step up on it for $1 million. What I want them to do is step up and take responsibility, and then we'll talk about what relief we want. The money is I can tell you secondary to the relief we're seeking. We want substantive change. We want substantive assurances, and we want to make sure this young man did not lose his life in vain. The money's less than some people, and I can tell you that reputation knows that the money is not important here. You cannot buy this law firm, nor can you buy we represent people, but we're not in it for the money. And let other lawyers tell you they're not in it for the money, and you can't question their agenda. I can tell you I'm not in it for it. And neither are my partners. We're in it for them. And we're in it for all the other Hezekiahs that we don't want to represent.
I know you guys have done a lot of talking. I just want to ask if mom or dad
them, they should give no comment whatsoever. It's just because there is a potential, and I emphasize the potential of litigation, and everybody here knows what that means. So we don't want them to misspeak. I don't think they would, but we don't want them to be asked questions because one question will lead to another. I will say I've been authorized by the family to tell you all how much they appreciate your prayers, your thoughts, the sympathy that's already been expressed by many. They are so devastated by this loss, but look at these people. They're courageous people, and the reason they're here, part of the reason they're here, certainly is Hezekiah, but a compelling reason they're here and having this press conference is they want the word to go out. They want change, and they want it now. They don't want tomorrow to read about another family devastated like this one has been, and they don't want another tragedy like this one. And in that, we are all on the same page. So that is the answer to any question that we would be able to allow them to answer now, and I just answered it. Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.